So, hello world, hello testers, QAs, software developers, or hackers. My name is Philippos Dimogerontakis, and I've been working as a tester for 3.5 years now. I'm doing mostly functional testing, but my passion is more like security. And I'm this crazy guy who dumped theater studies for IT and is happy about it. Today, you're not here to hear me. You are here to hear a story, to hear a testing story about how K8 test meets K6. If you already know what this means, then good job. If you don't, then you will hear more about it from our next speaker, Almudena. Almu, the stage is yours.
Hello, thank you everyone. First of all, I'm going to say sorry for how I will pronounce Kubernetes. Okay, I guess that being in Greece and saying Kubernetes bad, but yeah, sorry for that. The other stuff is that I'm old and I have to do like this to check everything. But yeah, who am I? My name is Almudena. I come from Spain, from Barcelona. My background is mathematics. I'm not a tester, sorry. I'm a site reliability engineer. I work in one of the companies within Lidl, within the Schwarzgruppe. It's a German group that has Lidl, the supermarket. So I hope that you all are buying in Lidl, right? You have the application. If you have the application and it goes slow, you can call me, because it's my responsibility, okay? So not for the coupons, not for the discounts, but if it goes slow, it's my responsibility. I've been working in Lidl for a bit more of 7 years, over 7 years, 7 years and a half, more or less. And I've been in the IT business, being a performance engineer, being a developer for almost 25 years. So you can guess my age, but don't tell anyone, okay? I love Greece. That's one of the things I want to say first. And as Philippos says, it's going to be a story. And it's going to be a success story. And you can know because you have all of you have the Lidl Plus app installed, okay? So you know it's a success story. So there was a time when I joined Lidl. It was like, as I said, 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. And we were starting the process. It was 2018. And we have a challenge ahead. That it was like deploying, doing the rollout, 3 countries every year, every single year. That was a huge challenge, okay? It was like that, 2019, 2020. Do you remember what happened in 2020? Yes, right? We have almost forgotten that. It's 6 years ago, but we were like all recluded at home. We were working remotely. And for supermarkets, what happened? I don't know here, but in Spain, we ran out of paper, toilet paper, from chicken. Everything was changing on a daily basis, that now you can buy 6 cans of beer, and the next day you can buy something like Coca-Cola. It was changing every single day. You cannot imagine. So it was one of the hardest periods in my life. I've been working like 12, 14 hours a day at that point during COVID period, just changing the 32 countries that we had. It was like changing all the rules of the company. So it was hard, but it worked at the end. And we had all those countries, you see, Slovakia, Belgium, Luxembourg, and we had, of course, Deutschland. It was the hardest one. 3 countries every 3 months. I didn't bring today my other T-shirt that says that for tomorrow is an eternity. That was the motto from my boss. Well, you know what happens in IT. For tomorrow is an eternity, it was like this. Our Benutza is user in German. And you can see that in 2020, it was like exponential. It started growing up so fast. Even though it was COVID period, our users were growing really fast. How do you scale that? And we've been talking about scaling scaling the infrastructure, scaling everything. But sometimes we always forget, how do I scale myself? That's my painting skills. You can laugh at me, whatever you as much as you want, those are my painting skills. No AI, sustainability for the win. I love to do random stuff, but that's my skills. I cannot scale myself. I'm not a Kubernetes. I cannot do a replica. It would be great. Well, sometimes a bit too messy. How did Lidl Plus get started? How was it born? It was born as a cloud-native system, as a cloud-native application. It was hosted in Azure. So we have like everything in web apps. We have everything like in services attached to Azure, right? Our performance system, so to say, it was 3 virtual machines in Azure with a JMeter there. So let me ask you, can you raise your hand if you have suffered JMeter in the past? But like this, right? I suffered it in silence since 2007. And you know what I mean now, right? The XML, I love JMeter. I've been working with JMeter for 20 years. I love it. But it's like a relation of hate and love. It's like, oh, I hate it, oh, I love it, right? Everything was at that point. The other question I can tell you: how many of you are performance engineers, performance testers? Oh, there's one there hiding. Hello, I'm a performance tester. There are not that many, right? In Spain, there are like a couple of them. Like you can count them with your fingers. There are not that many. So everything was centralized in one person. It was centralized on me. I was the first DevOps engineer recruited in the company. Okay, I created from them all the DevOps, the SRE chapter, as we said. But it was possible to have only one person taking responsibility of performance, like with 3 virtual machines and with JMeter and for the microservices when we have 9 squads, 8 squads, 9 squads, when we have less than 10 million users, when we have a system that it was monoliths. But we need to scale that. We needed to scale first infrastructure. We need to move to microservices because we want to scale up to all the Europeans, that potential users of Lidl Plus app that are the ones that go to the store. So we have to scale infrastructure, scale the teams, scale our software, because otherwise we were like banging our heads against infrastructure level there that you were not able to scale up from that. So I don't want to be alone. I wanted to have my friends. I wanted to have my developers. I'm lazy by nature. I'm lazy, I can say that. I didn't want to do all the stuff on my own. I wanted to delegate, that marvelous word. I wanted to delegate on my fellow developers, my fellow QA testers, my fellow developers, how to do the performance tests on my fellow SREs as well. So one of the first things that you have to do when you're scaling your testing, your testing infrastructure, your testing capabilities, is to create a culture. Performance testing or dimensioning, it was not only a check after doing a rollout or before a rollout. It was a culture. It was like, you can do performance tests in your local machine. Okay, you can do performance testing everywhere. Don't tell me that you need a pre-production environment. You will have it, for sure, to dimension, but you can run performance tests in every single commit that you do. And that's a question of culture. The other thing and the other stuff, it was like, oh, it's JMeter. I don't want to do this thing with XML. I cannot do a Git commit and do the difference because it's XML and I cannot see anything. Okay, I will put it easy for you. We will use K6. K6 is a developer-friendly tool. K6 is a JavaScript or TypeScript code, so it's easier if you use a Git. If you are using repos and you are using Git branches, it's way easier than an XML from JMeter. Of course, it's really, really fast it's really concurrent friendly as well. So you are using Golang below. The engine of K6 is Golang. So it's really powerful concurrent-wise compared to the JVM of JMeter. Of course, it has an easy integration with CI/CD. We were using Azure DevOps at that point, and it's really easy to integrate. And of course, you can use K6 was at that point, it was already bought by Grafana. We were using the Grafana stack, Loki, Tempo, Mimir for metrics, traces, and logs. So it was really easy to integrate K6 within our observability environment with the stack. So analysis and monitoring was really easy. It was just inbuilt in that. The other thing that we wanted was horizontal scaling. And I will go into that because this is when Kubernetes comes in hand. And extensibility. There was stuff that it was not created for K6 natively. So some integrations with products from Azure, for example, the Service Bus or the Event Hub, the extension wasn't created. So, but if you are a developer, a Golang developer, you are able to create an extension. Even if you don't know anything about Golang, you can create an extension because they are pretty easy, pretty fast to create. So yes, we wanted to scale our performance testing environment, the injectors and that stuff. But why? I said at the start that Lidl Plus App was born cloud native. It was in Azure. But there was a moment that you wanted to remove the vendor lock from your stack, right? From your system solution, from your products. Maybe in the future you wanted to move it to Google Cloud or to AWS. So we moved first to Kubernetes. And Kubernetes horizontal scaling, you have the auto heal, the resilience that it comes handy for it. So why I'm scaling my product solution and I'm not scaling my testing solution? Because I have to scale at the same time. Maybe for functional, it's not that really necessary, but for performance testing, if you want to inject, it's not the same to inject 10,000 users or to simulate 100 million users. So you have to consider to scale your infrastructure. But not only in your infrastructure, you have to consider the growing of your software. So if you are moving from monoliths to microservices, your complexity is growing up exponentially, considering the amount of microservices that you're creating. So you have to, as well, you have to scale. You have to scale your structure, your load test structure, right? What we did is to create like component level projects for each of the microservices, right? And then we have like a common end-to-end load test project. But the first stuff is like every single product squad team was responsible for their performance. So you need to create a load test structure for that microservices. And it was like for everyone, for all the microservices the same. So you can move between different microservices, and to create an end-to-end test, it was as easy as to import one of the components and just create it and add it to the other ones. One of the first stuff that you have to know about K6 is how you order or tidy up your code. So we created a standard. That standard, right now we are deploying it with Backstage. We have a Backstage template that just orders everything that the structure from your load testing. So we have the init code where you put all the options, what you are going to test. You have the setup, like this is, I'm going to wait until the microservice is working or whatever, because we have, and that's really important, load testing is pretty expensive. Even though you have to start it in your local, but if you're going to dimension, it's pretty expensive. So what we do is to have ephemeral environments that we switch it on and off during the day, once that we want to execute or run our load testing suite. So we still wait for the cluster to be alive or for the microservices to start. Of course, we have the default function, that's the virtual user. That's the one that we are going to execute like any amount of times. Then the tear down to remove everything that we want. I will go back to this, but sometimes we run the K6 as well in production. So this step is really, really, really important to be able to remove all the data that you created in production. So tear down is really important. And another thing that I'm really fan of is disruption. As I said, our systems were moved from Azure to Kubernetes. Do you believe when someone tells you that Kubernetes is auto-healing, resilient, auto-scaling? I don't believe anyone but God. That's true. And I don't believe anyone that doesn't bring me data. So I cannot believe if this Kubernetes, this environment, auto-heals itself or is scaling properly, or if it is resilient. So what I love, and it's because I enjoy it, is to kill stuff. It's to create chaos engineering. You can see some of my talks around or workshops about chaos engineering. But I have to break it in order to know how to prevent it. So that's why we usually have this step, that is the disrupt, where we inject failures. One of the things that I think is a cultural that we have included in our strategy is that failing or failure is a feature. Because we are going to fail, and you have to face it. And you have to be quiet and relaxed, because it's going to fail. Doesn't matter, I know how to fix it. So that's important. That I know how to fix it allows you to be really, 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 that you know how to handle stuff when it happens in production. Because I know how to handle it. I know how to fix it. So we have a chaos behavior in our tests. Boop, boop. Like this. The load structure as well is that everything is in the main, all the logic is in the main, all the checks are in the main, but all the definitions are like in an open API spec. So you only have to import that test to the main in order just to create a flow. So you have like a Swagger, right? You know Swagger open API specs? So you have all the definitions, you put all the endpoints there, but all of the definition, you don't put checks because it's not the test itself, it's just the definition. And then in the main, that it's easier to maintain, you create the flow that you are going to simulate, and you put the checks there because there is the test itself, right? So you can see there that we have like delete user. I'm going to do it like this. So this iteration, that's module 2. So half of the users or half of the virtual users of the threads will do a list users, the other will do a list clients, then it will do a delete user, delete client, and tear down the data. Okay, so that's the creation of the flow, because we are going to simulate the real traffic in production. That's pretty important. How do we organize the project? As I said, now we are having 36 squads with over 120 microservices, 120 products in microservices. All of them are hosted in the Lidl Plus app. In the Lidl Plus home, you will see like at least 48 of those services. It's amazing how a little loyalty app can have so many stuff. I'm going to say the other word. But how do we organize it? As I said, that we have the configs. The configs are JSON specs, or JSON files, that will just tell you how many users are we going to run concurrent, during how long is the test is going to be, what are the stages, so the configuration of the load itself, right? Then you will have a constant folder that it would have all the base URLs, and we have everything that is constant, actually. But basically, as you see, we have the base URLs.js, where we can change environment. As I said, you have to run it from the start. You have to switch left, and you can run it from the start. You can run it in local. So base URLs, it provides you the URLs that you will go testing against. The other stuff is that you have the options where you have all the test ID, you have the setup, as I said, and you organize like that. Everyone will organize the test the same way. So all the tests, all the projects are interchangeable, right? More project organization. As I said, you can have like different ways of organizing your test. You can organize it like more from the backend perspective, or you can organize it more like a Selenium way from the page object perspective, considering like this is the page that I'm testing, or this is the spec that I'm testing, and I have like the create admin, all the constructor that we have there, all the properties, all the setters, like more in a page object way, right? It depends on who is going to do or write those tests. It's not always the developers, it's not always the QAs, sometimes it's someone else. It can, the PO, it can, whoever they want to write the test in can do it. So there are like two ways of organizing the tests, and they can do it. They just have to comply with two stuff. It's like sending all the metrics to the Grafana stack, to a centralized observability stack, and to being able to import whatever that we want into the end-to-end project that we have. So more organization as well. You have to consider that the main test is going to have the flow of the user. So you have to, if you have like, for example, if you have seen that in production, you have 50% of your users are going to the home, and then the other 30% are going to the discounts, and then they are redeeming the discounts, and they are ending having a checkout and buying something, then you have to put that flow with those rates, with those waves in your test. Okay, so you are going to try to simulate the reality. That's something important in performance testing. So that's why we do this project organization. So we have the definitions in somewhere else, like the Swagger, in the specs, but the main is going to maintain that relationship between the different endpoints. Like I have 300 of the home, but I have 100 calls for the endpoint of the coupons. So I have to maintain that, relationship, that rate between them. The other thing is that what you can do with K6, and with JMeter you can do it as well. It's browser testing. With JMeter you can use a Selenium driver, and you can just create a Selenium test, or a Chromium test. But that's actually, JMeter is really costly. It's really a heavy feature of JMeter, while in K6 is not as costly, and you can easily do that browser testing. As well, you can use the K6 Studio in order to have this browser testing written. Okay, it's way easier now to create a browser testing. But the powerful stuff, the powerful option that K6 gives us is like you can do a hybrid testing. You can do the browser testing at the same time that you are loading testing your backend, for example. So that's a powerful feature that you will have in K6, because actually in real life you have both. Life is not a backend, and life is not only a frontend. You have both of them. And you have to know how the pressure in your backend, how it impacts your frontend, right? So that's really important. And it's stuff sometimes the performance testers forget. So you have the dark side, right? You have the dark side there. And what we can do is like, you can see there the flow. The flow is the recipes. We have this little recipe area. You can see it. It's a web. It's nice. I don't know the Greek site, but I bet that they have amazing foods there. But you can see. And the recipes front end, of course, it's a front end. It's a web server. But the part of the backend is a Next.js. Have you worked with server-side rendering? Server-side rendering, if you load test a server-side rendering, it will impact directly and straight onto your front end, right? So how do you test that? So many times I've been like, okay, I will do a load testing in my, I create a load testing on my backend, and then another test that it goes to the front end. No, I want to have both at the same time. I want to have all the metrics at the same time. And K6 allows you to do that. It's great. So, I'm a Grafana champion. I think I didn't say that. So I'm gonna say good stuff about K6. So yeah, that's how you put it. Like you have browser testing. You can if you are scaling your system, you are going through Kubernetes, you want to test resilience and self-healing, you want to test auto-scaling, there's only a way that you can do it, with a system that is resilient and has self-healing as well, and auto-scaling. So what we can do is to move our testing environment, our testing system to Kubernetes as well. The other thing that I said before, like you are in Kubernetes, what you want is to have chaos testing integrated. It's not only that you have browser testing, it's not only that you have load testing, it's like you break stuff on purpose. It's fun, I can tell you that. It's really fun to break stuff. Okay, so you have the chaos testing integrated. You can add two faults. One is like you add errors, and the other one is like you add latency. And with that, you have to know if you're going to, I don't know, but to grow your replica up to 1,000, and then you will have someone telling you that your bill is huge, and that you're paying Jeff Bezos' trip to the moon. You can see if your software depends on a third party, if your SLAs and SLOs are compliant, that I will talk after that. Okay, but the important stuff is that you will test the resilience, actually, of your Kubernetes cluster. Workloads. Other stuff from performance perspective. You are not only testing the infrastructure. You are not only testing the software. You are simulating users. I'm a mathematician. I love simulations. Okay? I try to simulate and create statistical models that represent the reality in real life, in production. So one of the stuff that I think I need to know is a closed model. Closed model is when you wait, you are a user, and you wait for the next step to be handled. So you are waiting, actually. You are reproducing the think time of the user during the different steps. That's a closed model. Once that you want to check the hypothesis based on users, you use a closed model. But sometimes you don't know how many users do you have in your platform. Because you have the front end, you have the back end, you don't know how many users. What you have as a metric, usually, as an SRE, as myself, what you have is the number of requests that you have in your system. Then is when you use the open model. You know how many requests, what is the concurrency in your system, so you use the open model in order to simulate that amount of requests per second. But you are not checking, you are not testing the hypothesis of how many users. You're testing the hypothesis of my system can handle so many requests per second. So never tell me the odds. That's what do we do, actually, as an SRE. If you have, I don't think that any of you have read the Service Reliability Engineering book from Google? I guess not. Well, if you're an SRE, you have to read the Bible sometimes. And you know that the service level objective, it's 5 nines. That's crazy sometimes. It's hard to achieve. And it's almost impossible, like economically and sustainable-wise, to achieve 5 nines, okay? So don't tell me never that you want 5 nines, because I will laugh at your face. But what can we do? We can add it. So the point is that an SRE tends to know about service-level objectives, server-level agreements, and service-level indicators. We have indicators. What we can do and to add to our K6 tests is the thresholds and metrics. You can check if that SLO, that service level objective, is achievable or not. If it's a fantasy, like 5 nines. Is it something that they can achieve or not? So you can test it. You can test as well your SLOs in your load testing suite, in your performance tests. Okay, so there you can see I'm a contributor to KEDA. KEDA is the Kubernetes event-driven auto-scaling. It's a project open source in the CNCF. You can just check it out. Just to, what allows you is to Kubernetes to horizontalize scaling based on metrics. The performance tests there are done by myself, so you can just take a look at them. One of the things that we do is to add a metric about the latency of how long does it take for Kubernetes to create an object. And that's a private metric that we created custom. So you can check that metric in order to have a threshold, okay? So it's not only that you can check on CPU or in response time or whatever, or errors, the usual stuff. It's not, you can even create custom metrics in order to check or to create a service level objective and be more, like strict with your, what will happen in production. And that's cool, that's pretty cool. Of course, there's a dependency there. If you have checks, you have to have thresholds. They are completely, you need to have a threshold and checks at the same time. You cannot run only with thresholds. If you don't have a check, the threshold won't work, right? The other thing is to create extensions. It's not only that you can create metrics ad hoc for your tests, it's as well that you can create extensions. It's really extensible. As I said, it's in Golang, so your extensions will have to be written in Golang. Now that we all are experts in Cloud code, we are experts in Golang, so it will be even easier. At that point, for example, what we do is to create different extensions. One, for example, is to read. Sorry, I'm going to kill something. I like to. This is because I didn't test it. I didn't kill it before. So one of the things, I'm going back to my mind. So one of the things that you can do is, for example, to read from Prometheus. Instead of writing in Prometheus, is to read from Prometheus. So you have these custom metrics and you read from them, right? So that's very important as well. The other, for example, is to create extensions in order to cope with or to work as to work together with some products that are from a cloud, for example, with Azure Service Bus or with Azure Event Hub. There was no extension at that point, and my fellow testers, my colleagues that were developers, in this case, they created these extensions. At this point, running tests is really simple. You are still in your machine. As I said, the first step that you have to do is to run it locally. And what I create along with my suite is to create a makefile. So it's easy to run it locally. So running the test is like K6 run test.js. It's really easy. You have, as I said, you have your main test, that is test.js. You have everything. It's really easy. But as I said, we need to scale up. We need to have being able to simulate 100 users. It's not only that you can simulate 10,000 users. Your product went from one country up to 32 countries. So it's not only that you need to scale your infrastructure in production, you need as well your system under test. You need as well to scale your testing environment. You need to your testing injectors, your load testing injectors. You need to scale that up. Your K6, where you are running the K6, basically. So that's why we use K6 operator. An operator in Kubernetes is something that allows you to have scale horizontally, something that will just create threads or create pods. In this case, it will create pods, a new replica set, and it will just distribute all the tests. As well, that's important. In real life, you don't have only one machine. You will have different IPs, different ports, different origins. So you have to simulate the different users. So having different pods with different IPs within your testing environment, it will help you to simulate real life and real users. Why the operator? As I was saying, your system under test should be accessed for multiple IP addresses. So sometimes what you have is a resource exhaustion, right? You can have a connection exhaustion. And you can only test that if you have different connections. A fully optimized node what I was saying, in your local or with one machine, sometimes you cannot produce the load required by an extremely large test or a test that you want to dimension your next product, simulating 100 million users. And as well, as Kubernetes was our preferred operations environment, our systems, our products were already running in Kubernetes clusters. We wanted our K6, our JMeter, our whatever that we want, Locust, Kotlin, to be executed in Kubernetes. How does it work for the K6 operator? There are different ways, right? The easiest way, and the one that I'm going to do the demo, it's a config map. A config map is a resource that you have in Kubernetes that what it does is to create a map of a file and do it as a configuration resource, right? So it's a really quick and straightforward mechanism to add a test, a script to Kubernetes. Actually, this config map, we will see it in Minikube. You will see that it's the test itself. What are the inconveniences? So the convenience is that you have a method to create a config map from a local script, so you can upload it to your Kubernetes, but there's an inconvenience there. Your test has to be lower than 1 meg, because config maps has a constraint, at least in latest versions, up to 131. I think now they are in the 134, but I think the constraint still is there, that a config map cannot be higher than 1 meg. You have tricks to deal with that. Sometimes if you put a CSV with your users, for example, because you have a data set, sometimes you go higher than that. The other thing that you can do, I don't know if I'm testing that, as I said, the custom resource to start the execution is the test itself. You can just describe the object and see the test. But I was here. Like the other way that you can do it, instead of putting the config map in Kubernetes, is to creating a persistent volume where you have a claim on it, and you can put all your tests on there. If you are going higher, if you are going over 1 meg, you can create a persistent volume, right? It's another way. It's a workaround. If you want to know about this, you can just ask me outside. But at the moment, for demo purposes, we are going to use a config map. That is the easiest way. So running tests are still easy. It's not now. It's not a K6 run now. Now it's a kubectl create config map. You are creating objects in your Kubernetes. It's still easy, but, well, it's not that easy anymore. But you're creating objects, and kubectl is like my daily basis. I have alias for K something. So it's really easy now. What you can do, and if you have an IDE like Lens, OpenLens, FreeLens, you can see the test going on. And this is something that you don't want to, right? You don't want to go into the pod, into the 1,000 pods that you have up, running the tests, and go into them and download the logs. What you want to is to send all the metrics created for K6, created in your environment. You want to send them to a centralized observability platform. In this case, we send it to Grafana Stack. We send it to Mimir. So that's another point in favor of K6, that you can correlate the metrics in your system under test, and you can correlate the metrics from your test itself. So you have all of them are in the same place. You don't need anymore to create Excels with the different outputs, inputs, and that stuff. You have everything in your Grafana Stack. Okay? You have everything in your Prometheus. So that's cool. And you have a native K6 dashboard. So that's cool as well. And now it's demo time. Do you believe me that it works? I'm not really sure. I think it works. I think it works. Sorry, but I have to change glasses, so I don't see. I won't be able to see you anymore because I can see it from far. Did you follow more or less the talk of how do we create the test and everything? So what I'm going to do first is to create. You can see here. There's a repo in my GitHub You can ask for it later. Actually, I will put it in as a link in my LinkedIn, where I will show you. I will give you the presentation, and will show you the repo as well, so you can follow it up. It's a really simple repo. Actually, as you can see, I don't use that much AI because I haven't. The README is just a couple of TXT. I don't use. I try to not abuse of AI that much. So the repo is really simple. It's just a test against the pet store. It's a demo that this works in local, and it works in the operator, right? So the first thing is like you believe that it will work. K6 run, tests, test. You can see that it's, okay, I don't have internet, so it won't work. Wait, I don't have internet. But you can see it's running, right? The test, it doesn't work. That is cool, because Pet Store, it's not going the Swagger store is not going to hate me, because I'm doing a late test. And actually, you're seeing here that it's running like mad, giving errors. But it's because I don't have internet. Doesn't matter. You believe me, it's running, right? And as I said, I like breaking stuff. This is how I break it. So it's in local, it's running, it will take like 20 seconds more, it works, right? The second thing that I'm going to do is to, well, I think I did it actually, but you can see another console, Minikube status. I have a cluster, local cluster, that is a Minikube. You can use kind, you can use K3, you can use whatever that you want as a Kubernetes engine. And this is where I will just deploy the Helm, right? Let's see, here it's this is freelance, that it's the open source from Lens, actually. It provides more or less the same information. So you can see here that I have a namespace called K6. Okay. So the namespaces that I have is K6 operator system. It has deployed that. It has the deployment. It has the config map, as I said, the CR root. The config map, it's in the default, actually. It's here. It's a load test type. It's a kind, it's load test. I have it here. I will have to delete it, or, well, I will not delete it. I will make it break, okay? So you will see me now not failing because I wasn't aware, I wasn't thinking of the internet, but I'm going to make it fail because it will try to create another test that actually it's already created. So you can see that it ended. It's here. It's saying, you don't have internet, 100% errors. Woo, woo, woo. In local doesn't work. And in the Kubernetes, it won't work either. But if I follow the README, first thing that it's going to deploy, that it's already deployed because I knew that there wasn't a good internet, is like it will add the repository of Grafana in order to install the K6 operator. This Helm install will install you the last version of K6 operator, right? 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, it was a GrafanaCon hosted in Barcelona, actually. It was announced the K6 operator version 2 and K6 version 2 as well. So this will provide you the latest version that it's in the repository. I'm not going to do it because, first, I don't have internet to go to Grafana GitHub, and the second, because I have already done it. The second thing is to create the config map. As I show you, I have already created. It's here, right? So this is going to fail. So I can edit it, describe. This is going to fail because it's already created. But I'm going to do it anyway. This here creates the test in our environment, in our Kubernetes, in the operator. So this is the creation of the test, the running of the test. Fail because it's already there. We can describe it. You can say that it's created. We can describe the load test. As I said before, It only provides you an interface that it's actually the test itself. This one is that I have a constraint of 1 meg. If your test is heavier than 1 megabyte, it won't be able to create a config map. But you can see here it's a binary data, everything that your load tests needs. So the other thing that I can do is custom resource. I create a custom resource that is a test run kind, and this is what it will start running the test itself. So the parallelism is how many pods I'm going to create in order to execute the test. How many pods do I need, basically? Usually, what we have empirically tested is that you need 1 pod of 1 CPU for each 100 threads. So if you have 100 virtual users, you need 1 pod. You need 1 CPU. So what we do as well to isolate these tests, you know that you need to isolate the load testing because it can impact how you are executing your load testing. If you're testing more than 1 resource, or you are running more than 1 test at the same time, it impacts. So what we do is to isolate 1 CPU per pod. And we assign like a node pool for each of the products. So they are completely isolated. So in this case, we are going to run with 2 pods the test. Yes, that you saw that it didn't work. So what do we expect? We expect it not to work. If it doesn't work in local because there's no internet, the operator is in local, it won't work either. So, well, but what I'm going to do is just to create a custom resource in order to start the test. So in order to create the pods that are going to start the test. Here. The case example is created, so it's going to start. Let's go to the pods. It's pending. We go there. Go to all the namespaces. You saw that we have a K6 controller, the initializer. The initializer is pending. And after the initializer, that I don't know if it's going to go to internet. If it goes to internet, I will put my connection. I don't think that it goes. It will create 2 pods that we have defined in the parallelism. And once that it goes with 2 pods, these 2 pods, they will start sending the load. It would fail because there is no internet for the operator to go outside. So it's going to fail. And I think that it's going to fail as well to create the initializer. Maybe it goes to internet for something. I don't know. But I'm going to put my hotspot anyway. Personal hotspot. How do we delete or stop? Actually, this is a good practice. How do we stop a K6 run? Let me just check for conectada. Okay. How do we stop something? By deleting that object. I can just delete the custom resource, and that will stop the pods to go. It will stop it. And if we delete the config map, it will just remove the test itself, literally. Right now, I don't want just to execute, so I will just delete the custom resource. So now that I have internet, let's do this again. Let's apply the custom resource. So the custom resource, it's only this here, as you see. It just defines how many pods do we want for this. And now I will start pending again for 4 seconds. Now it was an internet failure. So now we have the pods. We have the 2 pods that are going to have distributed K6 running. You saw that it's pretty easy to start it. Those 2 pods will have a lot of errors. The same errors that we will have in local. Okay? So it doesn't get to Pet Store Swagger because there's no internet. Well, there's internet now, actually. But you know why? It's because I didn't delete anything else. So it's going to give this error. We can do again something that is like, let's do this. Let's stop the test. We're going to delete it. It will delete it. It will stop you saw that once that I delete, it just removes the pods. And what I'm going to do is to create another load testing, because I remember now that I had to change something. So the config map here, and I go to the test itself, that is load test here. If you can see, I didn't edit it. It's different. I have to remove this one, so I will delete it. Because there's something I added yesterday, that it was insecure skip TLS verify, so it doesn't check for the certificate. So what I do now is like, oh, I had an old version of the test. I can delete it and upload it again. So I delete the config map. I don't have the test anymore. I can just update it. How do I update it? Just by creating it again. So I create this from my local. It just uploads it to my Kubernetes cluster that it's running in my context. In this case, it's running locally, but I have my kubectl just pointing to the context. So I just can create it. Let's check now. I can check it like with the describe, or I can check it through the IDE. With the describe, if the change has been uploaded. Okay, now it's uploaded. Now I have the latest version of my test in the Kubernetes. Let me check. I don't believe anything and anyone but God, so have to check it. And this is the old one. Yeah, it's there somewhere, right? Self-link, import from K6, target, the options. Let's check. Console log. It's in the end. There it is. You see here, insecure skip. So that shouldn't be. That now should be working. How do I make it work? Creating the custom resource. The custom resource just creates something over the definition of the test that we have. So now we have it. We go back to our pods deployment. It has started initializer, pending, the samples, the 2 pods. They created instantly the 2 pods running the test. And now these 2 pods, if we attach them and go to the pod logs, it's running. There are no errors. So we have updated the test. We have made it work. Now they have internet. They are blowing up my bandwidth in my mobile. Okay, but they are working. Okay. This is the succeeded, the initializers, the starter. This is like the infrastructure the Kubernetes, the operator uses. You believed me. It worked. Now it's running. We have 5 minutes for questions. I don't know if you have any question. I guess it was too much information. A bit too much information. A bit maybe too techy if you are not using Kubernetes on a daily basis and that kind of stuff. If you are not doing performance tests, maybe it's too much. But I suggest you to start doing some performance. It's fun. It provides a lot of information for you. It's not only functional. If it doesn't scale, it doesn't work. Okay. So, and 2 things, like treat your failure as a feature, and the second one is that hope is not a strategy. So you cannot hope that the stuff works by itself. You have to test it. And if you test how it works, and if you test how it breaks, you will know. You will have a strategy, and you don't have to pray to whatever God that you're praying to. So, and the other stuff, please buy Lidl. I will be able to pay my mortgage. So I hope that and that you are using loyalty. The loyalty program that we have, it's really enjoyable. You have coupons, discounts, everything there. Any questions? There, I don't know if we have a mic or for them. I can hear you, but I'm not sure if the people behind.
Thank you so much for this. I just played a little bit with the Key 6, so I have just two, actually, 3 questions for you.
Yep.
So you mentioned that it is possible to do browser testing together with the backend API testing. But you also mentioned that you work on a mobile application as well. So is it possible to combine mobile testing with...
If your applications are native, there is no way to do it. We have some parts, we are migrating right now the application to a React application. That way we can do a web performance testing. So yes, that we do that with the parts that are in React, we can do it. The one that I think I show is one of our products that is recipes, that is in a web. It's a web for recipes. But yeah, with mobile, so with native applications, it's impossible to do it, sadly.
Thank you. And the second question is about, I know that Key 6 is actually browser API performance testing, but my question is related to that for your mobile application.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of users, so a lot of users are actually using this application. Did you perform some kind of a device performance testing? So how actually your application impacted the CPU and the memory of the phone? And if you did that, did you use the simulator, emulator, or real devices?
From my point of view, what I do, I don't touch iPhones, basically. I'm against iPhones. And actually, our traffic is 90% Android. So testing Android, that you have a huge ecosystem of different devices and that stuff. I try to run old, low devices for that as well. What we do is to run it in, for example, the usability or the accessibility, the performance accessibility. So how many frames per second do we have in the transitions? How long does it take for something to, the render of the application? We run it in emulators, in Android Studio, that you have the emulators and simulators, that's cool. But, for example, for us, there was a huge gap with the battery usage for the push notifications, for example, and that we run it on real devices. There's no way that you can understand the CPU usage and the battery usage if you are not having a real phone. So what we do is to have like different devices, real devices in our, not only for the testing purposes, but as well for the load battery testing purposes, and we execute the test. So we plug the Android Studio in our real testing device for battery purposes usually.
Thank you so much.
Any other question? No? You can check with me in lunch. Now it's lunchtime, so Kaliorexi, I think I said correctly. Thank you, Haristopoli, and see you around.